Hi everyone, it's Lisa. Thanks for joining me today. Welcome to my sewing lair. I'm embarrassed to tell you how many false starts I had in trying to do this video. I've been so busy in the last 2 weeks. I mean, just stupidly so, like 12, 13, 14, 15 hours a day for almost 2 weeks straight, to include the Memorial Day weekend. So I am really very tired, but I did some work of monumental import, which I won't bore you with, but I was happy with the eventual outcome. But I am like really tired. So I wanted to do a brief video, and this is like take 10, it feels like, on my new machine, which is a Juki Kirei. It's in part of the HZL series, and it's an NX7. It's a fairly newer machine out of the Juki line, and in fact, if it's a machine that you have an interest in, you can buy one new for about $3,000, and that is of some pretty good discount off of the normal retail price. I bought this one used, and I paid $1,500 for it. I bought it on eBay from a dealer. I think it was a Bernina dealer, and this was traded in for who knows whatever else. And it did not come with the knee lift, even though that was part of it. So if you're ever buying anything used, you need to look on the manufacturer's site and know what comes standard and with it, and making sure all of those components are in it. That component was not in this one, but my Bernina knee lift fits perfectly with the machine, so that's just fine. And so basically I've got a lightly used machine at half of what I can buy it new. So if you don't know anything about me by now, I'm cheap and I like to get a good value when I can. And I feel like I got an excellent value. And the machine looks brand new. There's not a scratch or anything on it. Now, I probably have put a few things on it since I've had it, but otherwise it was clean and beautiful in every way. But it's a lot of differences between the machine that I currently have, and that's a Bernina 530. Now let me tell you why I got this machine. And it's for one reason, and one reason only. This real estate. This machine has 12 inches to the right of the needle. My Bernina has 7.5 inches. My Bernina makes beautiful stitches. It has lots of features, but it doesn't have some of the essential features that this machine has. And my Bernina has a Bernina stitch regulator on it, but when you only have 7.5 inches of throat space, having a stitch regulator isn't all that nice of an option when you don't have much real estate to comfortably and freely move your project underneath the needle. But given that I bought the machine at super discount closeout, where they threw in the stitch regulator and other things, and frankly, somebody made a keying error. The machine should have been listed for $19.99, and it was listed for $16.99, and I know someone keyed it in, because on a keypad the 3 is below the 9. So I feel like I got an even better deal than that. So it came with all the feet, all the everything, and it's a machine that I do enjoy, but it's limiting for quilting. So I have a little bit of a backup on UFOs, because frankly, the thought of quilting these larger quilts, what I had before were smaller quilts. They were baby quilts and more personal size quilts, but I've got some larger quilts. And I have to say that once you get over about 65, 70 inches in width, then that's where the throat space really becomes an issue, particularly when you don't have very much of it. And yes, I thought about getting a long arm, but frankly, I'll be 63 in August. I just started quilting in 2019. And frankly, by the time I get a long arm, it's an investment. I mean, it's, many thousands of dollars. And by the time I make that investment, then I have to have the learning curve of learning it and becoming fluid and good and all that stuff. And then I just had to take a step back and say, look, Lisa, is there anybody in my life that I will give a quilt to that will care if I have beautiful, balanced feathers on it? And the answer was quickly no. Or any other beautiful design. They don't care, but they will notice that I have a lovely pieced quilt with attractive, high quality fabric for them. But none of the other stuff will matter. So what did I decide? I said, I don't need a sit down machine with a really deep throat. When I say that, like the handy quilters and like 16-inch and over. Now, Juki does make, and I looked hard at it, and it's under $10,000. Maybe it's about $65,000, $7,000. Juki does have one of those types of machines, but frankly, when I learned about this machine and I could see what I could get it for used, I decided that that was the level of investment that I was willing to make at the time. And it would work just fine for me. And I got it. I tested it out. I had a 30-day return, and I wanted to make sure that I was happy with everything. So I had a 30-day return, and I sewed on it. And what I want to share with you today is what I like and don't like about this machine. I'm going to start with what I don't like about it because I don't want to leave you with a negative impression about it. As I mentioned, this was the top of the line machine. It has so many bells and whistles, and I will tell you that flip it. Features to dollars, you're going to get 3 times more features than the dollars that you spend if you compare it to a Bernina or another higher class machine. Now, I'm not saying that Juki's not a high-class machine, but it is not the same quality as a Bernina is. Even though the new Berninas are made in Taiwan, it's still the workmanship and all, it's still not the same. But it's like an American car versus a Japanese car. When you shut the door on an American car, it's going to sound different than on a Japanese. But it's still perfectly functional and all of those things. So that's really, really the difference, and that's where some of my quibble is. So things that I do not like about it. Number one, the needle bar is not as robust as what's on my Bernina. The way that you change the feet, it has let's see if I can do this for you. It has this type of foot, that little black knob is how you change the foot. That happens to be the piecing foot that I dropped. I'm still so uncoordinated because I'm so tired. But it's a great piecing foot. But, is it the same fit and finish as the Bernina? No. And let me show you. And I'm going to apologize in advance for sounding like a snob, but this is a Bernina 57. It's a piecing foot. I love this foot for so many things. And it's a high quality foot, as all the Berninas are, but I will tell you that, it's not a cheap foot. You're going to pay $30, $40, $50 for a Bernina foot. And Bernina has a very quick release system that essentially has a pivoting a pivoting arm, a hook that goes underneath that and snugs up the foot so it stays in place. What I like about this foot is that this gate is high quality, and you see how it swivels? It'll go over a seam. It's like a 4-wheel drive foot, but it does not move. It moves up and down. It does not move left to right. So I know that when I put this foot on my Bernina and go one click over to the right with my straights, and I have a straight stitch plate on my Bernina, I know that I have a perfect scant 1/4 inch, and you've seen me use that when sewing my compound diamonds, which require very, very precise sewing. Now let's compare that to the Juki foot. The Juki foot has the little black button which releases the foot. And what is nice about, let me do it this way, what's nice about this foot is that you can more easily see where this 1/4 inch is in the back. My fingers may be in the way. You can see more easily. I'll point with one foot since I have 2 feet in my hand. So that lineup is very easily done. And then there's another notch. I have to look and make sure. Yeah, and there's still yet another notch in the back here. So the foot is marked very well. I'm just not used to sewing on the edge, and I don't like sewing on the edge of this particular foot. But having said that, it's perfect. It's perfectly serviceable, and frankly, it is. You know, it clips on. It clips on easily. Easy for me to. Yeah, it clips on easily. So that's a cinch. But to attach this to the machine, you have a knob which you have to screw in. Here it is. You need it's not a thumb. You've got to have their screw tool or a screwdriver that fits in the slot. That's easily enough done, but you know, the fact that it's got the clip-on feet, you know, that helps. But if you want to put your quilting foot on, you know, that's, you got to take that off and flip it on and do all this other stuff. Now, the other thing that I do not like is this is the gated foot. Okay, so here's the gated foot, and I want to show you this. This is what's so chicken shit. Excuse my French, but look, it doesn't really move up and down. Well, it sort of does, but it's flanged out, and the metal is so thin that you can easily bend it. Versus this, you know, which isn't going anywhere, and it's always going to stay accurate. So you know, would I want a piece with this? No, I really would not want to. Now that brings me to two other things that I do not like about this machine. But again, I'm trying to be honest, and I'm not trying to disabuse you or to consider a machine like this, because it has so many features. You absolutely should consider it. But I just want to share with you some of the problems I have. This is a problem for me because look, this it's not flush. This throat plate does not sit flush with the machine. So if you're used to, like on my Bernina and on my 1946 Kenmore and any other sewing machine where the bed is perfectly flush, this has a beveled edge and it gets in the way. It's a problem. Now, if you're free motion quilting, then you know you really do have to have a super slider. There's no way you can do this without a super slider, and because otherwise you're gonna the seams or anything on the back is going to kind of catch on this, and it's kind of a pain. Now, in talking about the throat plate, it's worth noting that this machine comes with 2 throat plates and 2 feed dogs. This is the throat plate that you would use with a wider stitch, and you can You can see that there. And it also has its own feed dog system. That goes with this plate. And I'll turn it around this way. And as you can see, it's a pretty aggressive feed dog system. And see, that's how it fits. So you've got feed dogs here, and importantly in front of your work, and then to the left. So it is a very nice feed dog system that has, number one, a nice raised profile, and the teeth have a bite. You can feel the teeth bite on it. And I will say that this is more aggressive than my Bernina, which sometimes doesn't feel like it moves fabric through the way I want it to. However, the thing that I also want to point out is this is where the 1/4 inch mark is. So it's better to use the other throat plate. See if I can zoom in on this for you. This is the 1/4 inch throat plate. And all right, here we go. You can see that it has a single hole. And here is the 1/4 inch line right there, and the feed dog is to the left of it, versus on this throat plate where the feed dog is over here a little bit to the right. So that's worth noting that it does have a very nice feature to give you a straight stitch. Now, what's different is that I cannot, when you have, it senses that this plate is in it, and you are not able at all to change. You can't even go one stitch over. So even though I have a single straight stitch plate for my Bernina, I can still move my needle over. One click, I can move it over as many as I like. Of course, I'll break the needle if I'm not lined up with this hole. On this machine, you are physically, you have to move your work if you need a scant 1/4 inch. So that's a little bit of a rub for me, but, you know, I'll break fewer needles, you know, for that in case you forget. So that is a nice safety feature. But this really works well, but I do find that my work pulls a little bit to the left, and I don't know if it's because of this throat plate or not. Which brings me to the point is, like, no matter what, it's like adding, you know, I'm an accountant. God, adding machines, you know, over the years, you know, you always had your adding machine because you knew how it felt and everything else. And a sewing machine isn't any different than that. So you learn all the picadillos and peculiarities of your particular machine, and you compensate for it. So that's what I'm having to do with a newer machine. And of course, that gets harder when you go, I guess, as you get older and as you go between different machines. But that is something that I wanted to point out. So again, huge benefit for having two. And these are high quality throat plates. I will tell you, this has some heft to it, and it's well marked. And it has heft, but I just don't like the, you know, here's the beveled edge, you know, the devil is the bevel on this one. But I can still work with it, and that's not so much a problem. And it has a huge bed, as you could see. Now, I'm going to pause this for a minute and set up so I can show you a few other features now that I'm over the bad stuff. All right, this comes with a little stylus pen that you can use it to, you know, click whatever you like on the machine. And you don't have to have the stylus pen. As you can see, I have it attached to a ribbon on the machine because, you know, I'm disorganized and I really do sew in a layer, not in a sewing room or a studio. It is really a layer. But having said that, I just tied it to a ribbon, but I really never use it. I use my hand. But I want to point out now some of the really super cool features of this machine. First off, let's kind of look. You have, I use it with it open, and I have a thread stand. And the thread stand that I use, frankly, I think I paid $5 for it on Amazon. There's really expensive thread stands. I've never had a cone stand, and the coffee cup worked very well. But this thread stand works perfectly fine for me. And frankly, I have about a $650 thread stand, which is simply my Juki cover stitch machine. If it's sitting next to my machine, I just put cones on that. So anyway, you don't need to spend $40 on a thread stand. There's other little thread stands that work perfectly fine, because you don't need really any support except you're just trying to get lift on your cone. But I say that if you're working with a cone, you really do need a thread stand. So my thread stand is behind that, and you can see the header of it, right in here. So I buy big cones of thread, whether it's Aurifil or Wonderfil. I buy the big cones. I find them to be a good value, and I typically piece in light gray. I find light gray to work with everything. And what's nice about this is that all of your stitches you can easily see. On Bernina, you have a card, and that's just not very practical. And because you have to keep this open. And I won't go through the threading or any of that stuff. It's pretty straightforward. It's with the machine, and no one is ever going to buy a machine because of how the threading mechanism works. Or if you do, then you might want to rethink your decision making on features and benefits. Now, this machine has some really cool things. First of all, and I'll point this out, my Bernina has electronic stuff, but you got to keep pressing a button. The newer ones have knobs just like this. You may not be able to see it, but there's a black knob here in here. And now what's nice about it, here's like the thread control. Thread tension control. So you can, it's got a little slider button that you can use, and it's got a little blue default setting that you can see here. And this is where maybe the little stylus, and you can also just hit that button. So you can do it a number of ways. You can slide it, you can use the knob or do that. So there's like 3 different ways that you can change that, which is cool. And then each time that you make those changes, you just have to click it, and it goes back to the main menu. The other feature that you have, let me get in a little closer so that you can see this a little bit better. Actually, I tried to get in closer, but I had so much reflection, you wouldn't be able to see anything any better. So let's just kind of do it in a little more global context. So this is the tension adjustment. And again, all you do is press it. And again, you have the same ability to do the knob, do your stylus, or however you wish to do it. But once you're in something, you can't go to something else without just kind of saying, okay, kind of like on your phone, you're saving a contact. You got to tell it that you're done. You have the ability to change your foot. This is not the foot pressure, but rather the foot height. So you have a lot to choose from there. So when you're free motion quilting, you're going to want to be over to the left. So you want that foot, at minus height, not positive. I think I'm right in saying that. Am I right in saying that? I may have that backwards. The second thing is the foot pressure. I think that's what that is. Okay, when in doubt, you should consult the manual, which I did. This function is for the smart feed. Doesn't have anything to do with the presser foot. And the one above it is for the presser foot. Again, I'm just telling you the features that I like. I'm not trying to tell you how to operate your machine, because if you were relying on this, you would be lost. but but that feature is great. And the smart feed feature, I used it on a quilt that I was straight stitching, and it worked beautifully. I did not have a walking foot, and I don't even know if I can put a walking foot on this machine, because it has the lock stitch, the smart feed system, which is a little extra junk behind and on top the needle. And again, the other thing is you can change I can't change. Okay, so here, listen. It's saying, you dummy, you got the straight stitch foot in there, so it will not allow me to change the width of the stitch or the needle position. If you want to, well, I'll get to this in a minute, sorry. If you want to change the length of your stitch, you can do it, and it will tell you. Now, the really cool feature this has, and I can't show it to you at the moment, and I'm too lazy to change out the throat plate, but if I changed back to this throat plate, which, has the where I can do zigzag and other decorative stitches, this machine will tell you where the needle is going to go next. It has a little dot, so if it's on the zig, it'll tell you if it's on the zig or the zag next. And for any of you that do applique and you're working in corners, maybe using a blanket stitch where you have to count, it's like 1, 2, 3, boom, 1, 2, 3, you're to figure out what the needle swing is going to be as you want to turn your work. All you have to do is look at that, and that is a tremendous benefit. The other thing that is great, and it has the normal, needle up, needle down, but it also has foot up, foot down, which is really important if you're trying to do sewing and cutting and shoving stuff under your needle. And it is really automating things that you typically do manually, to include thread cutting. And I've got to tell you, having a thread cutter has made me feel like I've died and gone to heaven, particularly if you're paper piecing, because you can't chain stitch on paper piecing. You've got to stop inside. And this has two benefits. It has this, here's the lock stitch button, which you can use. And of course, it's going to tell you that you have to lower your presser foot. And so the lock stitch is great. And then when you get to where you are on the paper piecing, you just hit that again. And if you've got it automatically set up, it will cut and lift the needle and lift your foot. And that's what, now let's just go to that menu here. So you can start with a locking stitch, and you can end with a locking stitch, end with a cutting, and end with the presser foot up or down. And that's really quite a nice benefit. And it has a foot pedal that, you're going forward with this, and when you're ready to stop, when you do this, it will engage whatever you have asked it to do at the end of the pattern. So that's like super nice. So anyway, for $1,500, I feel like I got a very serviceable machine. It will get me through my quilts, along with my quilt suspension system, and I can find my quilting more enjoyable, and I will be able to enjoy paper piecing more. I do actually like paper piecing. I'll have the opportunity to have threads cut and just get rid of some of the drudge, sludge pieces of doing that by having it a little bit more automatic. So there you go. Hope some of that was useful to you. So if you're not satisfied with your current setup and you are a quilter, I would encourage you, number one, to buy as much throat space as you possibly can. And I have found 12 inches to be very good for me. And if you can get thread cutting, needle up, needle down, and an even feed, those are other features that would be very helpful to you. And when you look at the brands that offer that, think about the features and benefits relative to the cost that you wish to invest, and make your decision from there. If you have unlimited funds, that's great. It's a no-brainer. Go with the brand that you know and love and be done with it. But if you have to be mindful of your budget, then that's one way for you to configure your thinking about things that are great for you. Thanks for listening to me ramble about. I'm still pretty tired, and hopefully I stayed on task enough for you not to fall asleep and to get a little bit of benefit out of it. And I am going to show you sometime a non-quilting thing that I did, which was my do-it-yourself hummingbird feeder. But I'll do that at another time, because only this weekend, because the weather finally got warm here in Virginia, only this weekend did I start to see hummingbirds at it. So I'm really pretty fired up about that. So I know that that one works. All right. I'll see you soon. Thanks again for joining me. Bye.